Welcome to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. With me today is Michael Johnson, CEO of Metric. How you doing today, Michael?
I'm just great. I appreciate you having me.
Well, before we get started, I'd just like to tell the audience to please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. They could also help us out by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform they use. Finally, if you want to reach the podcast, you can email me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com. All right, Michael, I always like to start with learning a little bit more about your path to the cannabis industry. How'd you get started?
It's not too crazy of a story. Metric is based in Lakeland, Florida, which is a little bit outside of Tampa, Florida. Up until I'd say probably the last few years, this really wouldn't be considered to be the biggest hotspot from a tech perspective. And so kind of working and growing up in different software companies, you tend to know each other a bit. And so in 2018, when Metric received investment from Tiger Global, you pay pretty close attention to what's happening in your community, and so became pretty familiar with Metric. Got to meet a number of the folks, both from Casa Verde Capital, who's also an investor, but also operators in the team and founders. Our founder Jeff Wells is just an incredible man, one of the best people I've ever met, and so became a lot more familiar with the business. And a lot more excited about where Metric is heading and what Metric is able to provide to the industry and really to the regulatory supply chain ecosystem overall.
What were you doing before Metric?
Before Metric, I was actually CFO of a company that made software technology, like technology-enabled services in healthcare, actually in the genetic space. And so we were able to do quite a bit there, able to help that company grow pretty dramatically, and really love that experience, and I think it helped me learn quite a bit to bring to Metric and help us really apply some of my learnings there, and as we scale and as we grow, very similar to how they did.
So what is Metric, and how would you say it has impacted the cannabis supply chain?
Metric is actually to our knowledge, the world's most robust regulatory supply chain technology system. It is very unique in the sense that most supply chain technology tools do not provide full end-to-end visibility, whereas Metric is able to start literally at seed, or well, not so commonly started at seed, but at the very, very beginning of the journey in the cannabis supply chain. And then has an ability to provide visibility across all avenues and all aspects and every event along the way, from seed to sale, as it's frequently referred to. All of that information is housed and recorded and maintained within Metric, and Metric is able to provide that visibility and that reliability to all stakeholders that leverage the Metric system. And so it's a really unique kind of a technology that we're providing. We believe that it gives the greatest visibility and allows for the most robust growth of the credible legal market, and allows folks that are participating in the legal market to have access to the things they wouldn't otherwise have in terms of visibility, but credibility, allowing them to have more access to different parts of the banking system, insurance system, being able to help folks that are in various states, local jurisdictions, state jurisdictions get comfortable with folks that are bringing cannabis to the market in a legal and responsible way.
So when you say full seed to sale visibility, I mean, it's tracking everything that has impacted that plant, right? From seed till it was sold, right?
That's correct. Metric has complete visibility. There are certainly some nuances depending on how state regulations work, where certain events are tracked in a little bit more detail and sometimes a little bit less, but those nuances are fairly small. You're generally providing up to 350 different discrete events in the life cycle of what starts out as a very small seedling all the way to your final retail sale.
What are some of these events that you sort of need to track along the way?
It's a great question. So metric is going to identify the most critical elements, and there's a lot of flexibility, even if not required in certain states. But there's a ton of flexibility that allows for folks to be able to identify their feeding timelines, like how much fertilizer, what kind of fertilizer, what's happening in terms of what room something's in, what room a plant's in, sometimes the location of a plant within a room, able to provide visibility and context into clippings, manicuring, all the way to harvest, harvesting different weights, dry weight, wet weight, any waste. You're able to break down from there how something is packaged, where that package goes. Sometimes a plant will be harvested into a single package. Sometimes that it's harvested, the harvest is large enough to where it's in multiple packages, and those multiple packages go to a variety of different places where production or distribution may occur. In distribution, there's sometimes a breakdown. Sometimes you're harvesting for a different purpose. You might need to get down to some kind of oils, or you're manufacturing something with the cannabis. That's broken down into further pieces, and then that gets kind of repackaged and boxed up and sold to multiple retailers. And so it's a very unique one to many type of relationship, and that makes it pretty challenging for a variety of software platforms and other technology solutions to provide complete transparency into the process.
So you were recently named CEO. So congratulations. And how has your first month been?
Thank you. Yeah, it's a tremendous honor. For me, it's been a great time. Metric is grown up from a fairly small business into something that's getting a little bit bigger. It's an exceptionally warm community of folks that many of which have been here since the very beginning, and so helping us kind of walk that through those next steps in Metric's story is certainly something that we're all very excited about. I've also spent quite a bit of time meeting with different partners, stakeholders, regulatory agencies, things of the like, that have been relying upon Metric to continue to give them excellent visibility and service, and really doing the very best I can to let them know a little bit about who I am and about what they can expect from Metric going forward.
What are some of those next steps in your opinion, and what are stakeholders looking for from Metric?
I think Metric for many folks is going to have very different types of context. And so we have really a number of different types of customers, and customers for us means something very different than it might mean in a typical company. We have our primary customers are actually the state regulators, and we have almost 250,000 users at any one point in time. Only about 1,000 of those might be the actual state. And so they typically, the state users and state regulators are typically the ones that are charged from a government perspective with reporting and regulating the market. And we tend to be the backbone of what they're producing. We like to think of ourselves, we are absolutely the backbone of the legal cannabis system and supply chain. And so we need to support them in every way we can, but their needs and what they need out of Metric is very different than the vast majority of users that are using Metric from a day-to-day basis. And those are sometimes cultivators, producers, and really any licensed user that is trying to get something else out of Metric. For some folks, Metric is viewed as just a repository to put information, but the vast majority of Metric users are actually using the data and the infrastructure within Metric to run their day-to-day operations. And then next, and certainly not lastly, there's no shortage of stakeholders, but our integrators and other technology partners are very important to us. And so these third-party integrators tend to provide solutions generally to the industry, to cultivators and producers and retailers and the like. And so they find value, and they have, I think, a pretty strong relationship with us. And are able to connect into Metric to provide data into Metric, to take data from Metric that's needed to support perhaps a farmer's operations. And so their needs and their desires are a little bit different than the cultivators and actually primary users, as are they a little bit different from the government users.
How many government contracts does Metric have now?
Metric is 22, and that's 20 state contracts. And then we have 2 territories, Guam and Washington, D.C.
Are they all using it pretty similarly?
Yes, I would say that for the most part, you have nuances attributable to the legal requirements or regulatory requirements. You certainly have some shifts in folks that are using it primarily for a medical program versus an adult use program. But generally speaking, the metric experience in Oklahoma is going to be similar to the metric experience in Oregon.
So you mentioned third-party integrators. Um, there's a lot of analytics, a lot of information out there for operators, cultivators, but a lot of times they just don't have the time to make sense of it. Are these third-party integrators sort of building apps or other platforms that kind of help simplify it or break it down to make sort of the day-to-day operations easier?
Yeah, many are, and I mean, so we're integrator agnostic, but we do tend to spend a good bit of time with folks that have taken a special interest in leveraging the RFID technology. I mean, it's really if you're an RFID person, or if you're in the cannabis space at all, RFID for you really is the holy grail, and we really just scratched the surface on that in terms of being able to provide that level of visibility. Metric makes the RFID dream possible by embedding each individual tag with an RFID chip, but there's so much more that can be done. Every single agricultural supply chain across the country leverages RFID as table stakes, as the critical part of their business. In January, Walmart issued a mandate that requires just about every single item that's sold within their stores to have an RFID tag on it, every single one. And that provides visibility and also an exceptional customer experience. So there's some really exceptional integrators out there that are doing super exciting things that can provide tremendous efficiency and tremendous opportunity for any cultivator, retailer, and the like. We know a few of them that have spent good time with us, like Outlaw Technologies and also Cannabis, that have really supported trying to leverage the magic of RFID within their system such that they can provide the most efficient and the best overall customer experience possible.
So when you talk about your plans to advance the company's RFID tech and the Surface software as a service platform, are you talking about, empowering more integrators? Are you talking about, beefing it up on Metric side? Sort of what are your plans on that in that area?
Yeah. Yes. So we want to do both. Metric, we're really that long pole in the overall ecosystem, and we certainly want to support any and all integrators that can find the opportunity to leverage that power of RFID. We certainly are intending and have made some really strong strides in investing in technology and investing in our platform to both support ease of use and also RFID functionality. The RFID tag itself is something that I think has become pretty well known as it relates to Metric. We're very close to being able to share a more sustainable tag offering that's primarily made up of recycled paper and hemp that will allow for us to have a little bit more of a supporting piece of the overall ecological system, while also providing the efficiencies that our cultivators and users have come to expect, and I think can invest further in. As we get deeper into more maturity in the cannabis market, I think you see more competition. I think just like anything else that gets produced, you see more of a pressure on margins and more of a pressure on efficiency, and folks being able to respond to that with ways to get a little bit more creative and define processes that are scalable and allow them to maximize their profitability is really something that's important. And there's no better tool that's on the market right now than RFID. And as I mentioned, it's in the agricultural supply chain everywhere. You've got folks that are supplying to Walmart that are scrambling to figure out how to work with RFID and how to make this something that works for them, since it's going to be required by the country's largest retailer. The cannabis market doesn't have to do that. It's been here since the beginning. And over 10 years ago, Colorado, started that process. The level of visibility and efficiency that utilizing RFID will provide, not to mention the security aspect of it, because each of the globally unique identifiers on an individually identified plant is also written onto the RFID inlay. So for folks to be able to have this type of, it really is a pot of gold that I think a lot of folks haven't had the opportunity to unlock just yet. And we're committed to our platform, and we're committed to growing in a way that allows folks, all users, whether you're government, stakeholders, industry, third-party integrators, for you to have a better experience, to support the legal cannabis market, and to support the opportunity for folks to be as successful as possible in that space.
Well, I have to believe that, when you talk about a recycled paper and hemp-based RFID tag, that's checking a lot of boxes for the industry. Do you have a timeline for that? And, have you rolled it out to any potential beta users?
So I don't know if we have any beta users that are rolled out right now. I do. I'm holding one, so it's not. They're out there. They exist. It's important for us to make sure that we're doing everything we can to produce the highest quality product. Obviously, something that's made of recycled paper and hemp is gonna have a little bit of a different response to the environment. Typically, cannabis growing conditions are they can be hot. They can have a lot of light. They can be humid. So we want to make sure we're doing everything we can to produce a quality product. But we are close, and this is the type of thing that we intend to measure. And I probably will get in a little bit of trouble from our product folks, but I would expect this thing to be out and about within the next few months.
Okay. In your opinion, it has to be innovations like this that have kept Metric as the market leader in the space.
I think it's innovation, but I think Metric has perhaps more than any other company I've ever seen really bought into the commitment to provide quality insights and something that is meaningful to the users and to the customers of Metric. Now, initially, and I think up until a few years ago, that primary focus for Metric had been the government users, and in many ways it still is. The contracts that we have are with governments, and governments are charged with facilitating the most robust market. And so we certainly can appreciate and certainly want to do everything we can to be the very best partner. But as we spend more time with the third-party integrators, as we spend more time with the industry and cultivators and processors and retailers, we recognize that there's opportunities that we can make Metric a better partner to them, while maintaining this strict commitment to regulatory compliance and the robust visibility into the closed loop supply chain that no other supply chain and no other technology provides.
Well, that just makes sense, because you said regulators and government agencies make up 1/25 of your users?
Correct. But they're responsible for kind of setting the tone. And so when a state selects Metric as their partner, just like a state would select any number of businesses as their partner. I can't park on the street here without using the state's application, right? So when the state puts their name and associates themselves with a partner to help facilitate something that is critical to protecting public health and to fortifying legal market for something that's new and frankly some folks aren't as familiar with and not as comfortable with, we're able to do that. That level of trust and commitment is something that I take very seriously. And I think it's something that is continued to drive us, and certainly will drive us and will drive Metric into the future, to be able to continue to provide the very best offering and service that we can.
Does Metric do anything to help tamp down the illicit market?
I think in many ways the Metric's presence in general helps to kind of curb that illicit market. When you look at the most mature states, and you look at Colorado as an example, Metric's been able to work really closely with industry and with regulators to help support the legal market in a way that I don't think has happened really at this length of time. And they're the oldest in the United States, so they are the longest, so it's not really much of a comparison to anyone else, but they've done really such an exceptional job. And it's that partnership between the state regulators and the industry that's really been so emphatic in helping make Metric work as well as it has, because everyone in the legal space benefits from culling the illegal market. And so if you believe in the future of legal cannabis, you want to do everything you can to stand up and say, like, we're regulating ourselves. We're doing everything we can. We want to regulate, or we as growers, cultivators, and processors, producers, retailers, we want to do everything we can to make sure that we're doing this the right way, because we believe in building a foundation for this thing that is going to make the legal cannabis market something that's sustainable in the future, and something that destigmatizes some of the challenges that I think a lot of folks have encountered with cannabis in the past. And so Metric is that visibility, that platform, that technology, and that thought partner that makes that ecosystem function. Where Metric is able to provide that level of visibility to anybody in the space, whether you're a cannabis user, whether you're a cannabis grower, licensee of any kind, state user, or somebody on the outside that's just really trying to get a sense of what's happening and trying to get comfortable with cannabis in their neighborhood. You're able to get a sense, and you're able to get much more, much higher level of support when you see the sophistication that goes in to a robust track and trace platform, when you see the benefit of tagging each individual plant with a uniform, physical, wirelessly readable tag. You know that every plant that's going to be grown is tracked. You know what's happening. You know where it went in your environment, and that's special, because no other way. I mean, it's not like plants are grown, with a serial number in there, that comes out of the root. Being able to provide this level of visibility is something that really is incredible, and something that the way that cultivators and producers and folks that are in the space have really adopted and supported Metric, and have supported that level of visibility into what they're doing is I mean, there's really nothing else like it, and it's why we're going to be able to have unprecedented levels of success in this country in supporting the legalized market.
One of the things that I found interesting about your background was that you're a Six Sigma black belt. So, and I've seen a lot of that in covering the manufacturing industry in the past. I was kind of interested in how, you sort of take that process improvement methodology and use it in your role at Metric, and then how you think, sort of in more general terms, cannabis operators could stand to benefit from some of the process improvement techniques that you learned.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'm obviously an evangelist for Lean Six Sigma in particular. A lot of people that are familiar with Lean Six Sigma, and they identified process improvements, and they look at that as like, how are we able to cut costs? The real purpose and the real benefit of Lean Six Sigma is to provide the very best experience to the customer, and that should be something that should be embraced in every single company on the planet. When you are more efficient, when you are moving quicker, when you're providing a more quality product to the end consumer tends to have a much better experience, and you tend to grow, and the consumer tends to want to grow with you. Metric has grown pretty rapidly over the last decade or so. And in a lot of those types of companies, you find situations where we're doing the best we can. We're just running as quickly as we can, trying to keep up. As Metric has grown, and as some of the new challenges have emerged, Metric has specifically identified opportunities for the space to be able to maximize on the efficiencies both within Metric and both outside of Metric. And so the biggest benefit that anybody in Lean Six Sigma will tell you is critical to driving that better customer experience and ultimately that higher level of profitability is in data. And Metric is tracking literally almost 350 events for every single plant from seed to sale. That level of data and that level of insight that's available, because it's available to all of our users. Every licensee has access to their data. It's not our data. Every licensee has access to that data, and they're able to evaluate and identify exactly where the opportunities are for them to be enormously successful. And as I mentioned earlier, when you talk about the fact that the markets, any market, not just the cannabis market, but as it matures and as you grow more and more competition, it becomes that much more important to be as efficient as possible so that you can maximize your profitability. And so what I would share with any cultivator, any producer, any licensee in any state that is starting to experience this, or maybe thinks they might experience it in the future, think about it now. Get ahead now. We're very happy to spend time with you. We're very happy to spend time with the state. We will do whatever we can to try and support folks for any ideas that they have that might make Metric a better experience for them, might help them become more efficient, might help them leverage their data better, and might help them appreciate the magic of RFID and the automation that it will afford their organizations.
Talking about leveraging data, so Metric has tracked, by my notes, Metric has tracked more than 70 million packages and 150 million cannabis plants. So, first of all, how does the company manage all of that data? And, what has it learned from it?
Data is critical, obviously, to our customers, and what Metric does with the data is a pretty long and short or a pretty short question. The data is owned by the consumer, and it's owned by the state, and so we hold it, we keep it safe, we follow rigorous cybersecurity standards. That's something that's very important to us. It's not always the easiest to get to our data, and that's not an unintentional thing. We take it very seriously. And in this day and age, I don't know how a technology company cannot take safeguarding the data of that's housed within a system extremely important. Metric is, a lot of folks have said, well, there's not a lot to Metric, and then or we can do it with blockchain or something like that, and then you get into the details of the supply chain process, and you get into how 350 individual events can be tracked and stored, and you get to understand and appreciate the size and the enormity of the data and the number of transactions that flow through the Metric platform. And it starts to become really daunting and a bit overwhelming for some folks. And so I have tremendous respect for the folks here at Metric that have been able to really corral this, make sure that we're keeping the data safe, and that we're doing the very best we can in terms of developing the infrastructure to try and keep up with it. That's been a lot of the challenges of Metric for the past few years, is that the data keeps growing so much more rapidly that you have to keep expanding your infrastructure faster and faster and faster. And fortunately, we've been able to see volume increase at a pace that really requires us to work very, very hard to keep up. In some cases, we haven't. And, there's definitely been challenges which we're aware of and we've worked towards in terms of slowness in the system or folks that couldn't log in. This is a direct result of the industry growing at a much more rapid pace than I think just about anybody had been forecasting over the past few years. And we're doing we're certainly doing the best we can to stay ahead of that. And Metric cares about making sure we do that in the most appropriate, responsible, and safe way for the data. And we'll continue on that path.
Mentioning cybersecurity, other companies in general manufacturing industry, I think were a little, I don't think they realized how big of a threat cybersecurity could be to their business, especially when it comes to breaches, ransomware, stuff like that. Do you think cannabis operators are prepared or taking the sort of risk mitigation steps to make sure that their companies are not vulnerable when it comes to cybersecurity attacks?
I don't know. What I can tell you is that Metric does everything we can to be at the forefront. I apologize, my light went out here. We endeavor to be at the forefront of cybersecurity. We endeavor to do the very best we can. There's no such thing as foolproof. We're not going to pretend that we suddenly are, but I think you see a number of mechanisms in place that everybody should look into, not just Metric, not just cultivators or users of Metric or folks in the cannabis space, but kind of across the board in terms of multi-factor authentication, in terms of proactive penetration testing and things of that nature. So to the extent that anybody out there is in the cannabis space and has that question, I absolutely encourage you to pay attention to MFA. First and foremost, is certainly one of the most effective tools to help protect your data and your system.
Talking about some of those challenges, I had recently seen a bulletin from Michigan regarding a little bit of slowness. What are some of the challenges that Metric has faced, and how do you guys go about, fixing them?
Yeah, Metric. So, I mean, just like many other businesses, and really in the cannabis space overall, which I think I'm sure a number of your listeners here will be able to attest. The market is exploded, and so when you're talking about making that transition from startup to grown up for any business, there's a number of kind of awkward teenage moments, so to speak, that you'll encounter. Metric is no different. And so that the growth in some of these markets, Michigan's a great example. I mean, I believe, I don't have the latest numbers in front of me, but I believe the last numbers I saw were Michigan is pacing to do 4 times the volume this year than they did last year. There's not, to my knowledge, there's not a lot of folks out there that were raising their hand saying, hey, Michigan's gonna be 4 times the size, or that California is gonna grow in the way that it has. Or a number of other states. And so trying to get ahead and trying to anticipate and trying to kind of, gauge where the growth is going to be in each state, and sometimes in really tight markets, is definitely an area that has been a bit of a challenge for us, so that we can make sure that we're building up the infrastructure to support it. I do believe that we have made really strong headway in getting better. We're actually doing a number of different things from an infrastructure perspective, and making some investments to ensure that a Metric is not only available at the speed that is expected, but is also situated to where, as the market continues to explode, that we're able to handle that, and able to continue to provide the very best service for our users and customers that we can. I mean, that's a commitment that Metric needs to honor, and it's a challenge I think that Metric and many software businesses have endured as they continue to scale.
Do you have a personal relationship with cannabis?
I mean, I think we've all had different relationships at different points in time. I mean, I think when I look at my relationship with cannabis, and I look at folks that have relationships with cannabis that are able to get benefits, whether it's things that are primarily medical in terms of helping with anxiety, focus, sleep, I think there's a benefit for cannabis for everyone, and I'm particularly proud of our ability to support that, to ensure that folks that are enjoying or partaking in their cannabis experience are able to do that in the safest, most secure, and most appropriate, destigmatized way possible.
Now, I'm sure that you can't play favorites with anybody. So I was kind of curious if you could say, are some of the older states that have been online for a while, are they using Metric to its fullest potential? Or is it the newer markets coming online that are sort of, opening it up a little bit to new possibilities?
It's hard to say. I would say that because even our oldest, most mature states are really, not more than a decade old. That's not a really long time. I mean, it feels like an eternity in the cannabis space because of kind of how rapidly the market is evolving, and how rapidly the regulatory landscape is evolving. But you're going to see different scenarios for folks where you're going to have unique challenges, whether you're starting a brand new program, like a new state of ours, Mississippi, starting a program, or a state that we started in last year and kind of relaunched a little bit this year, in Oklahoma, which was a very mature market. It's going to take a little bit of time for that for the ecosystem around, or I guess let me back up on that. It's going to take a little bit of time for folks to appreciate that Metric is able to provide them so much that they used to get from different avenues and different systems, and frankly, a lot of times they weren't getting at all and they didn't know existed. And so what Metric is going to be able to provide as that central tenant of the ecosystem is something that I think is going to be truly special for them. As you evolve and as you get more mature, it's only natural that you're going to have more reliance and a better relationship with Metric. You tend to see folks in the states that are building their infrastructure around Metric, but you also tend to see a number of folks. I mean, more than half of the Metric users use Metric primarily and aren't using any other systems or any other integrators, which is a tremendous opportunity for our integrator partners, but also speaks volumes to what Metric is able to provide to folks that as that source, as that backbone to help them actually run their business.
What is your prediction for federal legalization, and how might that change how Metric works as a platform?
Well, I think our prediction is a little bit. It tends to be a bit agnostic. Like we're not really fighting one way or another, and I think there's benefits for folks depending on whether there's like a really strong oversight role for federal government or whether it's kind of left to the states. There's certainly elements on either side there, and there's a lot of opportunities in between. And I don't think this story is done being written. Got quite a bit ahead of us. What I feel most confident about is in either of those scenarios, Metric is really well positioned to be able to serve the role that enables the credibility in the legal market, whether it's governed, at the federal level or at the state level. I do think that you've got a lot of infrastructure that's built in place with some really, really successful states that have done a great job with their legalized markets and with their regulatory programs. And so in any scenario, I think Metric is best positioned to be able to serve the customers, the constituents, the government, the regulators, and kind of everybody in between to provide the greatest level of visibility and the greatest opportunity for cannabis as a legalized institution to be successful.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time today. Before we get out of here, is there anything else that you want to make sure that the Cannabis Equipment News audience knows about Metric or yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're here. And I think that's the biggest message I can say. I don't think that historically Metric has always done the best job at saying we're here, we're interested in partnering with you. We understand that some challenges in the past have existed with some folks, whether they're getting started using Metric, whether they've used Metric since the infancy, and there's it's certainly a much different product than it was 5 years ago. Metric is committed to being your partner. I encourage any person to reach out to me at any time. I'll do my very best to support you. I encourage you to take advantage of the benefits of RFID. And again, if you have any thoughts, questions on that, as I mentioned, there's a number of partners that are really doing incredible things. If you are someone that's trying to build technology in the cannabis space and haven't really thought about how you can integrate RFID into your technology, I certainly encourage you to look into that and build into it because it's everywhere. And cannabis has this amazing gift that cannabis can really take advantage of, and we want to do everything we can to make each and every constituent stakeholder as successful as possible.
Well, Michael, thank you very much for taking the time today, and please reach out when that new RFID tag tech comes out. I'm really interested in learning more about that.
We certainly will. We'll be shouting from the rooftops, but we'll make sure that you hear about it, and we can probably, I imagine we can send you some samples and anything we can get from folks, especially in the beginning as it gets used. We want to make sure that if we have to iterate, update, whatever we can do, we want to do whatever we can to put out the best products.
Well, that is excellent. All right. Well, before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. Finally, if you want to reach the podcast, you can email me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com. All right. From Michael Johnson, CEO of Metric, I'm David Manti. This is the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast.